You're on the
A bit
air.
more of the bunch than last time. Yeah, well, you gotta pick your time, right? Actually, usually an hour.
Yes.
You can decide it either way. You don't have that far to go, so. You don't have my time the other side. I don't usually.
I didn't get the passage. That must have been, that's what I'm doing. In my email.
Then I get stuck.
You didn't get the passage?
No, I like to sit.
Am I on the email? Is this email?
Right, sorry.
Yeah, I guess it. I just went out paper.
Did you know?
So I printed the essentials.
Was it the first budget meeting? Yeah. What I have to do is I just gotta take the calendar and throw it on. This is the second. This would be It's been on tonight.
Oh, yeah. That's what it said on the calendar. Oh, that's funny. I'm sitting down in the Senate office, you know, having a sales. Right.
See, well, they don't have meetings.
So I have. I don't know if he might get lost. I thought it was 86. Yeah. Oh, you did? I just looked. My calendar on my-
Send the day she was, came in, she didn't have it scheduled or anything yet, so they can work on it.
I really.
And normally if we never schedule something, we send an email. I won't even know it. Because we always.
Spend enough to get on yourself.
There you go.
There it is. In color.
That's it.
You have good time reading for too.
Basically, all your emails are right in.
All right, all right, I got everything. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Usually.
All right, I'm gonna call this meeting to order at 7:06. First, part of business is the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Did I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda, second.
Any discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. All right, passes. I have a motion to approve the open session minutes of November 16th, 2015.
Make a motion to approve the open session minutes of November 16th, 2015, with the couple of edits that have been identified and given to Kelly. Do we need to state those edits, or is that sufficient?
I think that's second. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right, that carries. Community comments. Welcome, community members. Any comments? Any points? No? Okay. Student comments. Actually, Chris is out sick, so we're going to skip over that. Superintendent. All right, well, thank you, Phil.
First off, I thought we'd start out the same way that Nipmuc has started out, where this is officially Nipmuc Wellness Week. And I think at the last school committee meeting, when we presented the Metro West health survey data, we talked about some of the data with regard to stress and stressors that our teenagers face. So I know that the Nipmuc counseling department has worked really, really hard. I think it's the second year that you guys have done this. So I've asked Meredith Hafez to come and talk a little bit about the programming, what the intent, the goals of the program are, and so on. So Meredith.
So as Dr. Mishik said, we're in our second Wellness Week. We started this last year based on some of the feedback from the Metro West Health Survey. And last year we got a lot of positive and really helpful feedback about continuing this on into this year. So this year we've actually decided to run 2 Wellness Weeks. So the first is this week, and the next one will be at the end of March. So we started today actually with a day of positivity. So this was largely done in part by our peer leadership group at Nipmuc, spreading positive messages across the school with Post-its everywhere and little tinted cards on the tables and cafeterias and bathrooms and all that kind of stuff. So definitely started off with a lot of positivity. Our main goal for all of Wellness Week, we have 2 goals really. One is to kind of provide a week where things are a little bit more relaxed, a couple of activities going on. We're also having a no homework day on Wednesday, so kids will have a day off of homework, which we're excited about. And also to teach kids different skills that they can use to manage their stress. So we're hoping that during Wednesday and Friday, our advisory days, we're gonna run 2 this week. We've had kids sign up for different activities to do for that half hour. So we're hoping that through doing different activities and trying new things that they learn new skills for managing their stress. So we've got everything from art projects to singing to dancing. We've got therapy dogs coming in. We've got a lot going on, and through the use of Sketch.com, which we used for our 21st Century Skills Conference, kids are able to sign up for whatever activities they want. So we opened that last week, and the sessions started filling up really, really fast, faster than we thought. In fact, some students even got in before we released it. They were really excited about it. So there's a lot going on, and we're really excited. And then we'll get feedback after this week, and hopefully we'll keep improving and keep making changes and having more wellness around the community. So that's
Excellent. Very excellent. It's very commendable.
Yes, questions?
so we have our website that has all that information as well.
So do we think stress is is it a big challenge these days at the high school level?
I think so, yeah. A lot of kids manage it, better or worse than others, so sometimes it's hard to pick out. But if we ask, individual students, give us a rate of your stress on a scale from 1 to 10, we probably get a lot of 7s, 8s, 9s. So yeah, there's a lot of stress.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Meredith. The second thing, this kind of, we go from nice things to MCAS and state assessments. But I'm sure you're already cognizant that on November 17th, the State Board of Education voted to go with an MCAS 2.0, as they're phrasing it right now. And they voted not to go with the PARCC exam as the new state assessment. So what they've rolled out is that for this coming year, just like 2015, districts will have the option to go either PARCC or MCAS. However, here's the caveat: if you did PARCC in 2015, you got to do PARCC in 2016. And then the new MCAS will be rolled out in 2017, the spring of 2017. They've been, I'm trying to figure out a diplomatic way of saying this. Let's just say they've been doing a full court press to districts that have been MCAS districts to go with PARCC. for 2016. When I heard this news initially on November 17th, to me, it was essentially a no-brainer. Why would we, for a one-year transition, move to Park when our students and our teachers are used to MCAS? What has been presented has been this idea of, well, realize that the MCAS 2.0 is very much going to have the look and the feel of the Park tests. So you really should give your students and teachers the opportunity to have that experience in 2016. I just think for the sake of simplicity, for the sake of the course that we've been down this point as a district, as communities, we should stick with MCAS for 2016. I know the district leadership team very much feels the same exact way. I had the opportunity with some other superintendents to have a conversation with the commissioner last Wednesday, and it was explained that the MCAS tests this year will have some Park items on it, specifically one writing prompt that'll come from Park and 10 to 12 math items. Again, I think for the sake of consistency, for the sake of our staff and how we've prepared them and so on, to me, it makes the most sense to stick with MCAS for 2016, particularly now that we're in December. And then like the rest of the state, we will go to this new MCAS 2.0. I put in your packet some FAQs. It's kind of interesting. Once again, the Park districts will be quote unquote held harmless, which means their accountability status won't be diminished. It can improve, but it won't be diminished if the overall performance of the district goes down. Whereas the MCAS districts, just like in 2015, they're going to be held to the same accountability system. Kind of interestingly, in 2017, the entire state will be held harmless in moving to this new MCAS 2.0 test. I know last year, because it technically was a decision, there was a formal vote taken by the school committee. If you want to take that vote, obviously you can. My recommendation is that we keep things exactly where they are for 2016.
That's a good question.
Absolutely.
I had heard today that fourth grade, are they doing the written portion, the writing part of the ELA testing?
Fourth grade in Mendon-Upton?
Mhm.
No. Right now we're slated. I have to make it an official, let the Department of Ed know by December 18th, which I haven't done yet. They said, if we don't hear from you, we're assuming status quo. But no, probably what you heard.
So staying with MCAS for this year, they
Correct.
will not have to take the written, the fourth grade will not have to take the written.
No, probably what
The
you
long
heard is one of the comps that will be on the MCAS ELA will be a Park-like item.
So they're not so that's going to be incorporated in the regular ELA portion? They're not going to have a separate day in
No, it's
April where they have
incorporated.
to do the.
Okay. So it's kind of interesting, and I don't know if this conversation came up at the school committee level. The Park Consortium now is down, now that Massachusetts is not going forward, it's down to 6 states and the District of Columbia. However, Pearson, which manufactures the Park test, is now selling individual test items. So the conventional wisdom is, Pearson will probably be one of the bidders for the MCAS 2.0 tests. How many years that will be taken to develop, remains to be seen. It's estimated probably a 2 to 3 year process to develop this new MCAS test, but the game plan would be to use park items in the interim to develop this new MCAS test.
They said that they're gonna go out to bid
Correct.
for 2017 administration.
2017 administration, but probably 2017 will be the first year of an MCAS 2.0.
Yeah.
In developing the test and vetting the test is probably a 2 to 3 year
So the
process.
first 2 to 3 years of this process, we're probably not, we will get information, but we're not gonna go live.
Correct.
And didn't last year actually do some sample testing?
That was 2 years ago. We did it was a field test where our kids field tested specific park items.
Mhm.
You mentioned, talking to some of the other superintendents, other districts that are MCAS districts, are they sticking with, MCAS? for
I was in a meeting
now?
with about 20 superintendents last Wednesday, and it was pretty much a 50-50 split. 10 were doing MCAS, did MCAS this year in 2015. Of the 10 that I was with, one was definitely switching to park.
What was the rationale?
Her rationale was what the commissioner was promoting as far as giving the opportunity to take park tests, and also kind of viewing it from the perspective of taking the test online. And kids having that opportunity. But she wasn't definite yet. She was kind of on the fence and bringing it to her school committee this week, as a matter of fact.
Do people feel we need to take a vote? I'm not a strong proponent that we need to take a vote.
I'm comfortable with staying with the vote that was taken.
I am as well. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me to go to a new test for a year. You're not really gonna get a lot of data from it, only to then switch back to something that the state actually is gonna have to build and develop a bridge basically to from the current MCAS structure.
I think continuity is key. I think continuity in the work that we're doing district-wide, the work that we're doing, our principals are doing with their teachers, that Maureen is doing with our teachers. Having that continuity, I think, is important.
You have to have some measurable results in our ability to track improvements in progress.
You know, and the irony is, the results within the last 2 weeks have been released down to the school-wide level. But if you recall, the reports that we get from MCAS, and those of you who are educators know that you get very rich reports drilled down to the student level, down to the teacher, classroom, and so on. None of those reports have been released for the park exam.
Okay.
So,
Alright.
yeah. So I think even if it's just one more year, I think sticking with MCAS is the wise move for us.
I think that all just reinforces the point.
And then last but not least, as I do every month in your packet, is the year-to-date expenditure report for the FY16 budget. Our line items are exactly where we anticipate that they should be for this time of year. Jay, is there anything that you'd like to highlight or?
But now we're in a holding pattern. So, I mean, I'm comfortable with where we are right now. We'll see where we are in March after the winter.
2 words, El Nino.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
When you say we're in a holding pattern,
I don't mean,
we just,
that's probably a bad term. In other words, right now, nothing terrible is happening. We don't have any catastrophes.
Yeah.
Our budget lines are where they should be.
resource costs are maintaining kind of what we
Yeah.
projected?
We had a run in the fall of maintenance issues that were starting to scare me, but that seems to have all kind of settled down now. You know, my last few meetings with Ken have been, look, things seem to be working fine, we're in okay shape, so that's a good sign. Because when that continues, that becomes expensive. So right now I'm okay with where we're at.
And we're not hearing anything from the state level in terms of,
As far as
Well,
potential 9C cuts or
Yeah.
anything of that sort, absolutely not.
Okay.
And if you recall, when that occurred last year,
It was November.
it was right before Thanksgiving.
exactly.
Okay, and that's all I've got.
Then moving on. Next up is administrator comments.
Okay. Something that is fairly significant is within the last, what would you say, about 9 months or so? You've
Right,
taken
yeah,
it
I took
over.
it
Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I saw you doing it, so.
Within the last 9 months, Maureen has led a committee of elementary educators, administration, in updating our standards-based report card. I think we've had that report card in place for around 10 years or so. So desperately needed some updates, desperately needed to change it, to align it to the Common Core standards and now also the next generation science standards. So we're going to be rolling that out this week. I think this week our parents get the first trimester report card with some background information. So just to kind of briefly talk about the process and some of the changes. Maureen.
All right, so I'm gonna roll through. So I really need to highlight the extremely hard work that the members of the report card committee, the time and effort they put in all of last year, morning meetings, all throughout the year. It was a lot to go through. I really feel confident that we did it the right way and we took our time and we didn't rush through it, and I think we have a really, really good product at the end that will hopefully communicate clearly. So last year, what we did is we met starting in November and went all the way to June. We had representatives from all grade levels, from both schools, and our primary task was to update the standards to the Massachusetts standards that were updated in 2011. So the report cards that have been in place the last couple of years have been using the old standards. So there was that disconnect in communication. So the first thing we did is we revised the purpose statement, which I'll show you in a minute. We revised the proficiency levels. We looked at what report cards, the standards and proficiency levels like at all throughout Massachusetts, and kind of honed in on ones that we thought would work for us in our district. We revised all our standards, including in the specials areas, and we also revised slightly the social skills and work habits and proficiency scale. So with the timeline, this quick timeline on the left, kind of how we broke it up, and we started in on math and ELA and spent the most time on that. But if we look into this year, we spent some work at one of our PD days revising our trimester 1 benchmark assessments. And in this fall, we've developed a new report card brochure. We had one that went back to 2008, I believe was the last one. So we revised that and also created benchmark forms that will go home with the report cards, as well as letters. We'll work on assessments the rest of this year and just revising them before each report card. And next year, and just a highlight, and this does show up in the parent letters, but the next generation science standards, which are incorporated into our Massachusetts science standards, they're going up for adoption in January. And so what we did is we put the new standards on the report card now, because we did this whole, we kind of reworked the whole report card, but in the letter it explains that on the actual report card, we're not going to be reporting out this year on those new standards. DESI will come out in January with, yes, the adoption, and here's the long-term transition plan.
And so we communicate that to the parents that we're still this year teaching the current standards, and that's, I don't want to say old because they're still current. And then next year we'll be transitioning. So that section's going to be left blank on the report card. So that's, we communicated that out. So that's why that's in there for next year. So the purpose statement, we really wanted to highlight that this was a communication tool for parents and guardians as well as students to talk about progress towards the attainment of academic and social standards. And so those are, for the academic standards, those are our grade level, curriculum standards. And that we really wanted to talk about strengths and how to guide improvements, and that was the purpose behind it. And so in the process, if we had questions, we always came back to the purpose of this is a communication tool for parents and guardians. We went through, because we've been working on our revisions to the curriculum standards, that the curriculum standards are not reporting standards that you see on a report card. And you can see kind of, we talked about the differences. In curriculum standards, they're really geared towards educators. They're complex, they're detailed, there's a ton of info in there. With reporting standards, you're pulling out those power standards that incorporate kind of the main components of what you're teaching, and you report out on that. So we teach all of the curriculum standards, but we're reporting out in the report card just these power standards. And so that's the difference between the two. With the proficiency levels, if you look on the bottom, you can see the details that we had in the old proficiency levels. And with the new levels, we can see that we tried to put in more language to communicate more clearly to parents what the various proficiency levels were. So meeting the standard is that 3, and there'll be times that some students may receive the 4, and you can see how it's the independently exceeds the grade level standard. We're shooting for the 3, but if you're at the progressing, which at some point students are going to be at progressing, you'll see it's with support in their forming and developing those concepts as they approach that 3. So hopefully, and we'll get feedback over the course of the year. So at the end of the year, we'll go and see if we need to revise or if there was miscommunications. But I do think that they came up with a really good descriptor and change from what we had from before. We've talked a lot about the standards that you see, those reporting standards are the end of year standards. So the goal is for all students to be meeting or exceeding that grade level standard by the end of the year. And we're broken up into the trimesters at the elementary level. So we've worked with the teachers to develop benchmark assessments to help determine the proficiency level at the time of reporting. And so at that PD day, they revised their benchmark assessments according to the changes in what we have for the reporting standards. And so that's what they're going to be reporting out at where students are at that time according to those benchmarks. And I'm going to give you an example of what that is. By the end of the year benchmark is that reporting standard. So I picked kindergarten, other than 4th grade math. So with the kindergarten example, so the end of year standard, and I just did the category of counting and cardinality. So, at the end of the year, we want them to count by 1s to 100. And so their first trimester benchmark would be count to 30. The second trimester benchmark would be count to 60, and then end of year is to 100. And so we developed, we have Word documents that are going to be copied and handed out to parents with the new updated benchmarks. And hopefully that'll make it more clear what the report cards are reporting out. You can see the differences between our social skills and work habits scale. And across all the grades, I would say they're pretty consistent. I think it was only maybe kindergarten that had a slight, a couple additional ones, or they were worded more, differently. But we have the consistently, often, inconsistently, and rarely. And hopefully that'll be a little bit more clearly than what we had. So that what we're referring to would be, these are the social skills and work habits. They used to be separated, and we combined them all together because there was kind of overlap last time we found, where things were sort of repeated. So we tried to narrow it down into one list. So in order to help communicate this is the brochure, you know, the outside of it and inside of it there, all the parents will be getting the new updated brochure that has a lot of this information on the inside. Right is, we have some vocabulary, we have the descriptors for the performance levels, kind of what standards-based reporting is. We have frequently asked questions. It talks about, you know, the NA. There might be a couple instances where it would say NA because they weren't taught that trimester. It would be taught at a later time, so that would be marked in there. So I'm pretty proud of the group, the work that they've done, and you know, we'll be rolling it out this week, so we'll get feedback after that. But it's really nice to have that change to the fact that now we're reporting out on what we're teaching. It's been a struggle the last year or so. It didn't quite match up in what we had before to our standards.
So at the elementary level, the report cards have gone out yet at the elementary
I
level?
think they go on Friday.
Yep.
So that'll be the first trimester, okay.
And kudos to you guys for
Yeah.
diving into that, because it is a huge undertaking to go from the old standards to the new standards. So thank you for taking that on. I just had a question about the science standards, because you're gonna have the science standards listed on the report cards they're receiving
Like
Friday.
the new ones, yeah.
And then is there going to be additional information to report on the current science standards, because those standards will no longer be on what they're receiving? How are they going to receive those grades, I guess is.
So what we talked to the teachers about, that they would communicate like separately, you know, how they do different
An
notices.
attachment.
You know, separately with their students or with the parents. It can come up if they're concerned about the parent teacher conferences. That's something we could talk about. So they're still teaching the science, they're still assessing the science, but it wouldn't be formally on the report card this year.
So is all the information on one sheet?
It's two sides, I think. Yeah, front and back. I'm hoping the font's not too small, one of the grades, we'll see, but we had a few standards to fit in there, but yeah, we got it all in 2 sheets. That's how we're trying.
2 sheets, but only one front and back.
It should
So
be
it's-
front, it should be front and back, is how it should print out.
It should be good. I think a lot of the comments you get at the elementary level in regards to the report cards is that they don't seem to make any sense sometimes in regards to tying back to the curriculum or tying back to what the kids are learning or
Right.
those items. So if we come back to the structure and it's all very clearly laid out, I think a lot of those questions will go away. I think parents will actually be quite happy with it.
So hopefully it'll provide clarity that maybe it's been missing in at least some of the areas.
Well, it'd be interesting to see the feedback we get after Friday.
I think the commendable work that really can't be underscored, and I know Maureen had a slide about this, is ensuring that there's commonality between the 2 elementary schools and a common understanding of defining the benchmarks at each trimester. That yes, those standards are end of the year standards. However, you're assessing the kid on where they are in regard to the benchmark at December, at March, then at June. I think that's a really, really key important point. And some of the feedback that has made its way to my level is sometimes some uncertainty or inconsistency in, I've got Mr. DeZutter who's going to grade the kids all year using the end of year benchmark, versus Mrs. Jango, who's just looking at trimester to trimester. So ensuring that all of our elementary folks are on the same page and we're identifying key benchmark assessments, I think is some huge work that Maureen and the principals and the committee have done. So good stuff.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so moving on. The budget subcommittee update.
Yes.
Yes.
We had a nice meeting, Bill.
That's good to hear.
We had a lot of discussion about the anticipated FY17 budget and the revenue that we're looking at. Up- It's been based on the historical data that we've had over the years, so we just kind of had a rich discussion about that, and we'll be looking at it again in January.
That's great. You guys are hot and heavy in the budgeting process.
Yeah, we got them all in on Friday.
Thursday.
Some of us were overachievers and beat the deadline, and we start the one-on-one meetings and reviews tomorrow.
Really get those budgets in, the quicker they start to move on to the holidays. Exactly. We have no, so anything else? Sorry. That's it.
Questions?
No old business, so for new business, we'll move on to the potential addition of soccer and field hockey to Municipal Athletics.
Okay, so I think we're tonight talking about soccer.
Talk about
Correct.
soccer, and I think Phil, you went a little bit about field hockey in the direction we're going. with field hockey,
Okay,
so.
but we do have some specificity. So I'll turn things over to Ann and to Scott Glassman, who can talk about an opportunity that we have in conjunction with the Mendon-Upton Youth Soccer League to get up and running a soccer program at the middle school. So,
So just to begin a little bit, we started the interscholastic program about 8 years ago, when the 8th grade came down. We had researched it for a couple of years, knew the 8th grade was coming down and needed some athletic construct for our students to participate. So we added, I think, started with 4 sports, and right now we added volleyballs, we had girls volleyball this fall, along with for 7th and 8th graders, along with 5th through 8th grade cross country, which is a big sport for us. In the wintertime, the students have the opportunity to have girls and boys basketball. Plus they can, it's not NISCO's sport, but they can go up to the high school and compete in indoor track as a 7th and 8th grader. Then in the spring of this year, we'll have baseball, softball, track and field for 7th and 8th graders. And we'll also have a volleyball for boys, 7th and 8th graders.
Maybe.
Definitely.
It's really anticipated.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of sports for the fall, last spring rather, but we certainly can do that. We've been wanting to add soccer to our program, but we had to do an awful lot of fundraising. So with the addition of the $10,000 last year that was put into the budget for this year, transportation was a little bit helpful, a lot helped out, and it really made a big difference. So we started looking at the spring of last year into adding soccer. Chris Hatfield from the Mendon-Upton Youth Soccer Association has worked with Scott, and they're going to donate all the equipment, fielding things, and he'll go through the details. But it's an opportune moment for us to add soccer for boys and for girls, which is probably one of the most popular sports that we have students participating in the school. It's also one of the most expensive sports to run. It's quite competitive, so that's why we've kind of held off. It seems, Scott's gonna go through the funding. It seems like it'll work out without too much more fundraising, because every time we fundraise, we impact the parents of the athletes. So Scott, do you want to go over a little bit of?
So, Mendon-Upton Youth Soccer Association has already agreed to donate $5,000, if not more, of equipment, uniforms, and so all the basics we need to get started. Basically, our cost would be head coaches, buses. So head coaches, it's about $5,000. Buses is another $2,200. Referees, another $1,500. Signers fees, $56. And then the total of $8,900. And less the fees, like $6,600. So it's going to cost our program $2,300 about to, give or take some little things here and there. But $2,300 to start the program. We're also going to be able to service over 40 kids, which is, I think, a big bonus. We're projecting to do 20 girls and 20 boys on each team, and then plus managers. Managers, they don't pay, but they help out. They work the sidelines, the soccer balls, and they like practice players. So whether they be 7th or 8th graders who get asked first that don't make the team, I know we're going to have cuts. Like our basketball team this year, none of the 7th and 8th graders wanted to manage, so we grabbed a couple 6th graders. And the kids asked around, and got some 6th graders managing the team, which is great for the future. You know, they get to see what's going on, and you know, just more students involved. That's the main thing. We're planning to use the football field, what used to be football field. We have a guy that lines the fields in town, Mr. Casey. So we'll reach out to him to line the field the first time, and then myself and the coaches will line the field. You know, when need be. You know, I think it's a great opportunity just to service more kids. We're currently servicing over 300 kids with our program, and as Ian said, with the track going to the high school, we have another, this year, we have 8 kids, I think, going up there, and we also have 7th and 8th graders that going up for field hockey, which their program is growing now. The field hockey is finally getting bigger, so I think we're talking to the coach, the 7th graders they might not need the 7th graders anymore, which is great. That means the numbers are going up.
And our program it's just a feeder program for the high school teams. It's really a learning program. We make sure that all students participate. It's not just the top students on the teams. It really is, you'll see and you can feel when you go to the games, very collegial, very communicative with each other. It's not about who's the best on the team, it's who's trying the hardest, and that's what we try to promote. It's also, you know, one of the biggest problems at the high school is stress. Well, that's the biggest problem at the middle school is stress, and we look to combat that all the time at the school, and athletics is one of the greatest ways to combat stress. The field hockey, we're looking around and there's not too many middle school interscholastic leagues, teams in field hockey, but there are clubs, and the clubs are from towns and different things, so we're looking at maybe having a field hockey club instead. We do have Mrs. Hardcastle, who is a field hockey coach that really is passionate about doing this. So we probably will start that. It won't be part of the interscholastics, but it will get a whole bunch of 5th, 6th, and 7th grade girls involved in field hockey. Maybe some 7th graders will be able to go up to the high school and compete on their teams at the JV level. Our 8th graders definitely, we need them for that program for a little while longer. But it's a great feat. There's not too many opportunities in town to be on teams for field hockey. So we'd like to kind of help out, whether it's interscholastics or whether it's just a club that we play, you know, parishes and we play other club teams around just to get the girls moving. That would be a good thing. That's our plan, and we'd like to really would like, I know soccer is just the kids are always emailing me about soccer. Are you gonna add soccer, Mrs. Meyer? And we really would like to do that for the children.
So who would we play in soccer?
So right now we are in the Bay State Tri-Valley League.
Yeah.
So we'll have a 14 game schedule next year, 14 to 16 game schedule. We'll be playing Hopkinton, Ashland, Bellingham. I don't think Bellingham has a middle school soccer anymore. Medway, Medfield.
So Tri-Valley Leagues.
Mostly Tri-Valley and some Bay State, some closer Bay State, Northborough. This year, basketball, we have Natick. We talked, because we didn't want to travel so far. We've been traveling a couple far games, like Wellesley, Natick, Ursuline Academy, and so forth.
Yeah.
But it's a good ride. So in our meetings, we had a meeting and both sides agreed that the trips were kind of far, especially since we're very competitive in this league. And we usually win, and we sometimes win by a lot. And it's not fun for those kids to travel down here to get blown out and then drive back. You know, it's not, it's just not worth it. They'd rather play somewhere in their own area. So we made the adjustments. We might have to travel 1 or 2 far games, but basically Tri-Valley teams, and some Dew Valley. I think there's a couple Dew Valley that have soccer, maybe Douglas. I'm not sure what they have now.
Definitely not that.
They just started up. They just started up some more sports.
Okay.
So
I thought BMR had.
DMR, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But like Uxbridge, he's been varsity volleyball.
Okay.
I'll give you 3 years.
You know, we win a lot, but it's not because our coaches are hard on the children or they're looking to win. It's really a teaching league. And you'll see when we play some other teams, the coaches are really very hard on their children, and it shows on the courts. And our coaches, we have a really great coaching staff that it's child-centered and learning-centered. So we found some really great people inside our school and outside our school.
So in talking to the Mendon-Upton Youth Soccer League and Association, well, I mean, I guess my question is, what is their thought about this? I thought there was a question before about potentially that would kind of draw away from them. It might confuse the situation.
I
A lot of
think
kids
they're
play
looking
club
to,
soccer and all that kind of stuff.
there's always gonna be club sports.
Yeah.
And, you know, we run into that problem now. You know, 10 years down the road, are we gonna have soccer in the schools? I don't know. But right now, the Mendon-Upton Youth Soccer is a proponent for it. I think it's gonna help our high school out tremendously. And they're looking to see the kids develop through the youth. You know, especially the 7th and 8th grade. I'm gonna say it's gonna make probably a majority of 8th graders on the team because there's gonna be that many kids that try out. You know,
So it'll be
probably
similar to
technically-
like baseball or.
Yeah, I could probably technically field a 7th and 8th grade team if we had a budget to it, but we don't. I don't have the room or the time to do that. So, and I think it doesn't help, I mean, it helps that, you know, Chris Hadfield is the head of the Mendon-Upton Youth Soccer. He's also our boys varsity soccer coach and does all kinds of crazy clinics all year long for kids in the towns.
Yeah.
It was great for the towns. So, you know, Mendon-Upton Youth, I actually worked at their big fundraiser this year where they fundraised over $20,000 at the Oktoberfest.
Best fundraiser.
I was selling pizzas.
Yeah.
I was selling pizzas there, so
The biggest fundraiser.
they did really well, and they're looking to put back in the community.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's great. From a league perspective, it's just games. It's not like, it's just the championship at the end.
no, middle school sports, in any
I
middle
think it
school,
was-
there's no tournaments, there's no championships, there's no weekends, there's no vacations.
Yep.
You know,
Cross country and track and field, we go to state meets and on the
Yeah,
weekends,
there's
that's about it. It's the only running
Yeah.
sports.
and once in a while, you know, if it's approved, we'll do, you know, like we're trying to somehow maybe finagle a night game for a middle school. So I don't know if it can happen this year, but we bring our band in and stuff like that. Trying to see if we can do it, but I don't know if it's gonna work schedule wise. So I know that we'll be going up to the high school and playing games at the high school, which we do every year, with boys and girls.
I think it's an outstanding idea, particularly in light of just the incredible success that our high school soccer program has.
Yeah.
You know, the girls being state champs last year, the boys with their real incredible run that they had this year. So, I mean, kudos for putting this together. I think it's long overdue for the middle school.
So, I'll ask the question, budget impact? Are we concerned? I mean, it doesn't seem
No,
to be.
we actually, we
Self-sustaining.
yes, we're self-sustaining except for the 10,000. We won't be asking for any money. We'll just have to do a little bit more fundraising. We've kind of, this year, the only fundraising we're doing because of the 10,000 is the boys versus girls basketball game and the dodgeball tournament. And that we're doing that because it's tradition and the kids really like it. Next year, we'll put back in place our socials and our different events to make up any costs, but we won't be looking to the district to fund anything.
Okay.
Unless they want.
Unless they want to, and then we could.
Well, to be clear, the $5,000
Yeah.
from the Mendon-Upton Youth Soccer, that is for startup costs?
Startup costs, so, I mean, basically your goals, your uniforms, your
Okay.
corner post, and soccer balls.
Okay.
Just keep in mind though, I mean, right now, there is little or no funding at the middle school level for any of the athletics other than $10,000 for transportation. As we go forward and more things are added, there will be a financial impact that we're gonna need to look at funding athletics to some level at the middle school. There's no way for it to be completely self-sufficient. You know, it may work for a year or two, but eventually we're gonna have to come up with funding for it.
Well, the more children that we add though, their fees kind of take care of most of the things. And
Good
until, our philosophy really is until the high school is at a level that the financing is manageable and doable for families, then we can fundraise and we can be self-sufficient until we're good at the high school, because we are a feeder program, so we don't want to take away from funding from the high school sports.
Well, we've been doing it for 8 years.
It's fun.
Yeah.
We love socials. Socials are fun.
I understand. Okay. So we need to take a vote? All right, can I get a motion to approve the addition of soccer, unless there's any questions? Any more questions? Thoughts? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the addition of soccer to Municipal Athletics, because we're not adding field hockey yet?
Make a motion to add soccer to be included in the municipal athletic program.
All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No, carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks, Scott. You did a lot of legwork on this.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate it.
I think it'll be a good thing.
Thank you.
I think it'll be a good thing. I think there's a lot of interest, I think, on both sides. Boys and the girls, it's been one of those areas, it's been kind of a gap, but at the same point, I think a lot of people are really like, how do you make that happen? It'll be a good thing. All right, next step, foundation budget review.
Okay. Not as maybe fascinating as soccer,
It's pretty fascinating.
but a very important topic. I know as a committee, we've discussed the Foundation Budget Review Commission probably for at least a couple of years now. I know when we've had our meetings with the representatives and the state senators, it's come up time again. I've kind of given status updates. I had the opportunity to testify before them last March. So lo and behold, on October 30th, their final report did come out with their recommendations. So I thought I'd take a few minutes to kind of review the report and what some of their major findings and recommendations were moving forward. Just as a reminder, the Foundation Budget Review Commission met a grand total of 7 times, or actually 13 times, 7 meetings and 6 public hearings from the period of October of last year to June of this year. The commission was co-chaired by the 2 chairs of the Joint Committee on Education, Representative Alice Peisch and Senator Sonia Chang Diaz. And the commission really had a broad representation. You kind of see the alphabet soup of the folks that were involved, but you see MASC, MASS, MTA, AFT, the Association of Regional Schools, so basically all of the stakeholders that are heavily invested in this were represented around the table. I think you could probably summarize, this is almost like a good thesis statement. This is literally, what do we have there? The first 3 sentences of the report. And essentially it says, okay, ed reform of 1993 was terrific, but right now we're falling short. Okay, and actually the estimates are that we are underfunding education to the tune of about $1 billion annually. Okay, but they also realize the scope of how much they can take on. So consistently in this process, the 2 things that kept on coming up time and again were health insurance and special education. That things were very much out of whack in the state funding formula, and they really hadn't done any updates since 1993 in the funding formula in calculating the foundation budget. So really the overwhelming majority of emphasis and recommendations within this report are in those 2 areas. Okay. So in looking at health insurance, what are some of the basic findings? and these are really facts. In tracking employee benefits and fixed charges, which is part of the formula that goes into the foundation, what districts are actually spending versus what is budgeted exceeds the budgeted amount in the foundation budget formula by 140%. So over double of what is actually allocated. Something that we all know, that the inflation rate that's applied to the foundation budget doesn't come anywhere near as close to what people have been paying, particularly in the last 10 to 15 years. And also, the foundation budget formula takes into account your employees, but does not take into account retirees. And the overwhelming majority of municipalities and regional school districts, such as us, have, an obligation to fund at least a portion of the health insurance of retirees. So what are some of the recommendations? The recommendation is to change the formula, the part of the formula around employee benefits and fixed charges, to reflect what is the average GIC rate right now, using that as kind of a benchmark. Adding a category that includes retired employee health insurance, and then also adding a healthcare cost inflation adjuster, something that's realistic, again, using the fluctuations from year to year, whatever the GIC rate is, okay? The second major area, as I said, is special education. And some kind of interesting facts. One, in the original formula from 1993, it assumes that in the formula that 15% of your students are receiving special education services 25% of the time, okay? The reality is statewide average, it's closer to 16%. Okay, so that 1% difference actually is huge when you work it out over the course of a district. Also has an assumption that 1% of your students are out of district place, okay? That one statewide is average. For Mendon-Upton, it is not. Mendon-Upton, we're closer to around 1.5%, okay? Something that I think we know well, the foundation budget amount for out of district placement is $25,454. The reality of the situation is an out of district placement is markedly more. Okay, I think here in Mendon-Upton, probably our average out of district placement is more in the ballpark of about $40,000. Okay, so that's clearly another place that's out of whack. So the recommendation is to increase that special ed rate to 16% in the formula, and then also to increase the out of district rate to up it to 25, up it from the 25,000 to capture the total cost before circuit breaker is put into place. So the report also has some other areas of findings and recommendations. And they really chose to focus in, and again, this was behind special education and health insurance, but areas where the testimony said we're nowhere near at the place where we were back in 1993, particularly with regard to ELL students or our English language learners. There's a whole, if you look at the foundation formula, they give different rates per pupil based upon whether the English language learner is an elementary student, a middle school student, or a high school student. The recommendation is change for all grade levels to the middle school rate. The middle school rate is the highest rate for each student because statistically, middle school ELL students have the most needs and have the most services. And then for low income or economically disadvantaged students, really a lot of the pieces there is ensuring that it is the correct percentage. If you recall, and I think we discussed this last year in the spring, that the state has changed its definition at looking at low income from students that just receive free and reduced lunch to students whose families have been identified as receiving state services. So a lot of the recommendations kind of speak to ensure that that data is correct, and then also ensure that schools and districts are creating plans that really capture best practices to close some of those achievement gaps. So some of the other recommendations, a lot of the recommendations kind of speak to data collection and how you're tracking students. There's been some recommendations of let the money follow the student, so to speak. There's some recommendations that talk about having more than 1 point for financial tracking. If you recall, the October 1st enrollment is used for all things financial. So one of the recommendations is coming up with 3 or 4 different data points throughout the year where you actually adjust some of the aid. For districts that have high mobility rates, they're obviously advocating for something like that. I think that last bullet point is important. The scope of the report at the conclusion says, look, we admit we're probably underfunding education, public education in the state by at least $1 billion. In the scope of this report, there's some areas that we haven't dealt with. Ironically, one of the I testified on 2 things: special education and technology. This report doesn't even begin to touch technology. They also note that they feel like they're off on special education, noting that in the last 22 years since 1993, there's been a much larger shift towards inclusion services for in-district special education. With inclusion, as we know, if you're doing it well and you're doing it correctly, you're adding staff. So it doesn't even address that piece. So this is kind of an interesting thing. Again, looking at this data and looking at the gap of just these 2 issues of health insurance and special ed underfunded, basically in looking at FY16 numbers and what the gap would be if you look down to that lower right-hand box. It's estimated that the gap in just those 2 issues of how foundation budget is calculated, they're off by $568 million. Okay, so again, it's a pretty big number, $568,370,210 statewide. So the interesting thing that the Foundation Budget Review Commission did in conjunction with the Department of Ed this summer, when they were crunching the numbers, is they actually did a work through for every single district in the state. And they said, okay, where is your foundation budget? And again, using the foundation budget calculations for FY14, which is the last year that they had, if you were to implement the report's recommendations, what it would do is it would increase our foundation budget by a little more than $2 million. It would increase between the 2 communities the minimum local contribution by $97,000, but significantly would increase our Chapter 78 by approximately $500,000, which is pretty significant. Okay, keep in mind, there's a variation. And I think I sent you guys the spreadsheet. There's plenty of districts that wouldn't see a dime more. I think the number one district was Springfield, that would be looking at $24 million more in Chapter 70. So there's obviously a lot of variables based upon your student population, based upon what you're paying for health insurance and so on. But I think the essential core of this is there the political will to actually do something about this? Kind of an interesting perspective on this. In 1993,
My web search turns something up. Is there a political will to actually do something?
wow, that's pretty good. Thank you, Siri.
It's technology.
But in 1993, when ed reform was enacted, it was in the initial report, promise kept. The gap was $2 billion. That gap was closed in 7 years, from FY '94 to FY 2001. Okay, so you've got a gap now of $568 million. Had the opportunity last Tuesday, the Worcester County Superintendents met at their monthly roundtable, and Representative Alice Peisch was our speaker. And she basically talked about the report, and invariably, the first question is, okay, great report, we completely agree with this, is this actually going to happen? She wasn't committal, but she said that there was significant political will to do this. She said, obviously, recommendations would be a multi-year approach, potentially a 4 or 5 year approach to close that gap. The question is, would they develop that approach in time for FY '17? Would it be FY '18? She said, I'd say half seriously and half facetiously, well, after all, 2016 is an election year. So it'll be interesting to see what will come of this. I think it's clearly a step in the right direction. I think it would have positive implications for our community. But I thought I'd, review where exactly we are with this.
Okay.
Any questions?
No, it'd be interesting to see where they go with it. It'd be interesting, do they talk about the various different kind of student categories outside of those areas? Just like the different, like normal versus vocational versus things like that? Do they?
No, it really focuses strictly on ELLs and low income. It actually, if you get into the nitty gritty, it's additional money for all districts for ELL and low income, but also additional on top of it for ELL, low income that are in vocational schools.
Can I ask a question?
You may.
Maybe I'm not reading this correctly. If our foundation budget were to go up $2 million, but the minimum contribution in Chapter 70 only go up by $600,000, where's the other $1.4 million come from? I'm looking at the spreadsheet that you included in your in the packet. I'm missing something, I just don't know what.
I'd have to take a look at that in depth.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be interesting to see though where it really goes in terms of the discussions. because the other part of making it happen is you gotta find the funds somewhere.
Well, and that's.
That's the
key
big-
piece.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, on that note then, move on to our next topic. Chief Procurement Officer.
Okay. We received word a week ago, 2 weeks ago, that as a regional school district, we need to designate someone as chief procurement officer for the process of being a purchasing agent and establishing RFPs on behalf of the regional school district. And we have to vote on this and submit this to the Office of Inspector General. So obviously for Chief Procurement Officer, it makes abundant common sense that Jay, as the Director of Finance and Operations, should be this individual. Phil, you, as Chair, you have to sign off on this. So I bring this before you for a motion and a vote.
Okay. I mean, Jay's doing the purchasing already. It makes sense. I don't know if, does anybody have any comments? Is there any discussion? Are there any items, questions you have? I mean, there's no change to the job responsibilities, there's no change to the authority that he has, there's no change to the job he's doing today. Okay. Well, then I'll take a vote. Can I get a motion to approve the appointment of Jay Byers, the Chief Procurement Officer?
Make the motion to approve Jay Byer as Chief Procurement Officer.
Second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right, carries. I guess I'll sign it. All right. Jay, congratulations with these new responsibilities.
Thanks.
Well,
It's
wait,
always nice to have more responsibility.
it's nice to be able to give it. All right. Any correspondence? No? Any other matters not anticipated by the committee within 48 hours of the posting? All right. For future agenda items, I think the next meeting, we're going to try to do the school committee goals today. Just good to make sure we have everybody that can participate in that. And then on the 25th of January, we'll have the first pass of the FY17 budget. We look forward to all that lovely work that's going on right now to be aggregated together and be reviewed. If there's nothing else? Anything else? Okay. Then we adjourn the meeting at 8:16. I have a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion adjourned at 8:16. Thank you.
Okay, Jay, to answer your question.
The difference between foundation and net school spending.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing the math